the line honours winner for the 73rd Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race is LDV Comanche, skippered by Jim Cooney. And that is pretty amazing, because it's only 2 years ago that Comanche was successful for Jim and Christy Clark here, and half of the crew were back on board Comanche in 2017. So at this point I'd like to acknowledge our VIPs here today. Firstly, furthest from me in the white Rolex jacket is the Commodore of the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, Matthew Johnson, the Commodore of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, John Marcos, the General Manager of Rolex Australia, Patrick Boutelier. We have an apology from the Lord Mayor of Hobart, Sue Hickey, and of course the Premier of Tasmania, the Honourable Will Hodgman. So we'll go ahead formally now with the presentation, but firstly I'd like to call on the Premier of Tasmania, Will Hodgman, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Can I acknowledge the Commodores of the RYCT and the CYCA, and to Rolex, great sponsors of this wonderful event. And they say politics is a tough business. Well, there's obviously a fierce competition on our beautiful river that has played out the latest dramatic chapter in what is one of the world's greatest sporting events that we are so fortunate to have end in our beautiful capital city. I want to take the opportunity to congratulate Comanche on a tremendous effort to commiserate with Wild Oats, but without those wonderful crews competing so ferociously at this magnificent sporting environment, we wouldn't have this tremendous event that we enjoy each year so much. So sincere congratulations to Comanche, a very well-deserved win. It sets up 2018 as another tremendous spectacle that we will all enjoy, and I do want to thank very much the Tasmanians and those visitors who've come to our state, who come out to the harbour, to the side of our river, to witness this fantastic spectacle and make it the truly tremendous event that it is that we enjoy each year. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Premier. I'd now like to call on the crew members that are here with us today on LDV Comanche, and you can acknowledge them as they come up, as they meet the official party. And firstly, the bowman Justin Slattery. Bow and grinder Shannon Falcone. Bow and grinder Stuart Pollard. Two of the other grinders, Keats Keeley and John Von Swartz, are not with us here this evening, but they will, I assure you, receive their medallions. Grinder Jeremy Tilse. And Jeremy, a well-known rugby footballer here in Australia, 55 caps for the famous New South Wales Waratahs. Trimmer and the daughter of the owner and skipper Jim Cooney, Julia Cooney, just 20 years of age and a med student at Adelaide University in her third Rolex Sydney Hobart. And her younger brother by 1 year, also a trimmer. Please give a big Tasmanian welcome to James Cooney. Pit and bow, Julian Crescent. And not with us here at this moment, Ryan Godfrey, but Nick Burridge is with us. So please come forward, Nick. Two of the trimmers aren't present. I refer to Tony Ray and also Warwick Fleury, but main trimmer Dirk de Ridder, please come forward. Also not here, David Rolfe, trimmer and driver, Brad Jackson, trimmer and steerer, James Spithill, the co-skipper with the owner, Jim Cooney, and also Casey Smith, pitman and 2IC. But the tactician on board LDV Comanche, Kelvin Harrop. and the penultimate crew member, but one of the foremost navigators in the history of ocean racing, Stan Honey from the United States. And of course, he was the man who navigated Comanche to victory just 2 years ago. And last but not least, a man who's campaigned the famous Brindabella and Maserati, and now as the owner and co-skipper of the LDV Comanche, the winner on line honours of the 73rd Rolex Sydney Hobart. Please give a big Tasmanian welcome to the winning owner and skipper, Jim Cooney. I'd like to call Jim to come forward now, please, and we might have a few words. Well, tell us about the last 24 hours. I guess it's been a pretty difficult time for you.
Gordon, probably not as tough as the previous 24 hours, to tell you the truth. It was a blistering run down from Sydney, and we worked the boat very hard all the way, and I think we sailed it to the best of our ability and to the best of the boat's potential. So we were very excited to enter Storm Bay, just a small but comfortable margin ahead of Wild Oats. The challenge then we knew was ahead of us, the unpredictable Derwent, and in the end it turned out to be the second time in 2 years running that I faced that challenge. Then, of course, we know what happened in the following couple of hours. So yes, it's been an uneasy 24 hours for us. And to be honest, the real race was out there. The result is, I think, a fitting testament to these guys here and to the potential of the boat. So we're delighted with the way the boat performed in the race, and very, very happy to be standing here.
Was it always cut and dried that you were going to go ahead with the protest?
In my mind, Gordon, it was. I felt very strongly that at this level in our sport, when we are competing at an elite level, and what's involved here is the two most significant super maxis in the world at the moment, and they don't perform like an Etchell or a Laser. They require a little more judgment, a little more space, a little more time, and we weren't afforded that. And I think it was important to us to take the position that actions like that on the course shouldn't go unnoticed, because it sets a precedent for others to do the same. And I think as a policy, I'm very pleased that the jury upheld that.
Well, it has happened twice previously. Back in 1983, Nirvana was disqualified, and Condor was placed first after Nirvana took line honours, and again in 1999 when the same thing happened for Laurie Smith with Rothmans, who flew the Rothmans on their Spinnaker down the Tasmanian coast. But this was certainly slightly different. But I'd like to follow you up on, you talked about the crew. Firstly, Stan Honey, a little insight into the experience for you and your family being on board with the great man.
Well, Stan is a very calm person to be with, and no matter what's happening on the boat or on the water, he brings a presence that makes you relax and trust him. So maybe he should have been a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I'm not sure. But the fact is, he's not just a good navigator, he's potentially the navigator in the world.
And winning America's Cup skipper in another Aussie, Jimmy Spithill.
Yes, Jimmy likewise is. He's a brilliant match racer, and there's nothing that escapes his attention anywhere on the water, anywhere around him, and he responds very quickly to every situation. And I have to say, it was due to his calm actions and his attention that we avoided any significant damage in the harbour that could easily have taken either our boat or both boats, perhaps, out of the race. More significantly, though, nobody was injured, and that's I think due to Jimmy's quick thinking and very decisive action.
And a proud father too, I would imagine.
Of course, I've always been a proud father, Gordon, but especially at this point where I have my son James and my daughter Julia, who's sailed with me on Brindabella and Maserati for years. But gosh, to be standing here as the line honours winner and record holder, it didn't dawn on me until after the press conference at the protest hearing that we had the record as well. So I couldn't be prouder of us, all of us as a family, because it's an activity that we've always undertaken together, we've enjoyed it together, and really that's the reason we're involved, because we get to do it together.
And finally, just give us a taste of how nerve-wracking it was last night in the Derwent, because they only caught you, Wild Oats 11, well into the Derwent River, and I reckon there were about 30,000 people here. But what was going through your mind as you saw them coming up and finally overtaking you?
In many ways, Gordon, in a river like the Derwent, where you wish you had a lot more local knowledge than you do, because if you're only here once a year, you don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the river, and there is an awful lot of local knowledge that makes a successful failure on the river. We came past the Iron Pot in good breeze, and we kept going for another few hundred metres, perhaps a half a mile, and then we stopped. We watched wild oats steaming along on the other side of the Iron Pot, knowing that we thought, safe in the knowledge that they had to sail into the same hole that we did, which they did. But then, as we were coming out of it, they'd found a better breeze towards the left-hand side of the course and began to accelerate. That was certainly very nerve-wracking. Although we knew it was still another 8 or 9 miles to the finish, and I didn't expect that the race was over there. In fact, none of us did, and the guys were all 100% committed, and nobody was resting. None of the heads were down. It was a very positive and solid approach to the remaining 8 miles, which ended up taking us a couple of hours. So very nerve-wracking. I expected at that point that the lead might change another few times before we got here, and we got close to that when we drove across to the other side of the river. But in the end, it wasn't to be. The breeze began to die more and more as we got closer to the finish. So that dragged the margin out from a few minutes that it was perhaps a half an hour earlier to what the 27-minute delta it finished with.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please show your appreciation for a wonderful effort by Jim Cooney and his magnificent crew to take line honours in 2017 on LDV Comanche. I'm now going to call on the General Manager of Rolex Australia, Patrick Boutillier, to present you, Jim, with the magnificent Rolex timepiece, time honoured to the winner of line honours in the Rolex Sydney Hobart.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Jim, but we haven't finished yet. There's more to come. Of course, that beautiful silver trophy. The CYCA Commodore John Marcos will now present you with the Illingworth Trophy. You already have your medallion as the owner and co-skipper of the first yacht across the line. Three cheers for LDV Comanche. Hip hip! Hip hip! Hip hip! Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning all. As the clock just goes past midday, but we are here, of course, for the announcement of the overall winner for the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race for 2017, the 73rd edition of this great race. And of course, the line honours battle has dominated proceedings and headlines over the last 3 days, particularly with the upholding of the protest. But the true heart and soul of the Rolex Sydney Hobart is about the fastest boat to Hobart based on its handicap. And that honour has gone to a boat half the size of the Super Maxis. I refer, of course, to Ichiban, skippered by Matt Allen. A yacht that is state-of-the-art, the equivalent of a Formula One racer, but we'll hear a little bit more about that very shortly. I'd like to acknowledge our VIP guests here today. Firstly, the Commodore of the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, Matthew Johnson, furthest from me. John Marcos, the Commodore of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. The General Manager of Rolex Australia, Patrick Boutillier, and the Premier of Tasmania, who was caught in a traffic jam. I can't believe it, a traffic jam in Hobart. Of course, the Premier, Will Hodgman, MHA. But without further ado, I'd like now to call on the Commodore, Matthew Johnson, to officially welcome you all here today and acknowledge our handicap winner.
Thank you, Gordon. And on behalf of the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, I'd like to welcome you here this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, and to officially congratulate Matt Allen and his crew of Ichiban for a fantastic result. Matt has been a big supporter of the Hobart race. I think this was his 28th race himself this year, so a great achievement in itself. And he's been running a very professional Ichiban campaign since 2002. His first one, for those who can remember, was a 52-footer, which was all gold deck. It was quite a amazing looking yacht. In recent years, Matt has been very close to victory. He's had 3 top 10 results in the last 5 years, which is quite an achievement in itself. Matt is a great yachtsman, as well as an accomplished sports administrator, being the current president of Australian Sailing, but also a former Commodore of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, and many other positions. So on behalf of the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, again, I'd welcome you and I'd congratulate Matt Allen and his crew. Well done.
Thank you, Commodore Johnson. And now I'd like to welcome the Commodore of the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, John Marcos.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the remarks made by Matt, and thank you. It's a wonderful occasion to recognise so many people from Hobart, not only coming out to welcome the boats that finished on the Line Honours contest, but also for the occasion of handing over the trophy for the overall winner. And I do want to thank and especially acknowledge the Premier, Will. Thank you very much for your support and for the support of the government in helping us administer this end of the race. In terms of Matt Allen's win, it's an occasion for him that I think he is obviously a very well recognised yachtsman, not only here but around the world. Matt has already acknowledged that Matt Allen is the President of Australian Sailing, which is the peak sailing body in Australia. He's also a member of the Australian Olympic Committee, but he's never before won this trophy. So it's a wonderful occasion to celebrate with Matt Allen on the winning of this trophy. And I do want to thank everyone for coming out today. The weather certainly turned on against what I thought was going to be a cooler day. I also acknowledge the Derwent's in place, so we won't see a few more boats come in for just a little while yet, with more than a third of the fleet yet to come in. Thank you all for your attention today, and I wish you well for the rest of the day, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow with other boats coming in.
I'd now like to introduce you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the crew of Ichiban, the overall winner of this year's race. And firstly, would you please give a big Hobart welcome to bowman Craig Garnett. The other bowman on Ichiban, Davin Conograve. Sewer in his 25th Sydney Hobart yacht race, Jeremy Ray. Marsman Charles Kosecki. And the crucial people, the trimmers, William Sykes. Harry Bethwaite. Wade Morgan. Sean O'Rourke. James Corrie. And the last trimmer, Stephen Thomas. Next, the boat captain, Tim Sellers. Anthony Merrington, known as Youngster. The watch leader is not with us today, but he deserves a round of applause. A very crucial man in the crew and a former handicap winner in his own right. And a famous yachtsman, Gordon Maguire, the sailing master. Gordy, a handicap winner on Atara, representing the Irish Southern Cross Cup team back in the early 90s, and also a handicap winner on Lockie. And a very famous navigator, of course, Will Oxley, a veteran of 5 round-the-world races. Superb job by Will. And finally, as John Marcos and Matt Johnson mentioned, the skipper of the winning boat, the owner, Ichiban, Matt Allen. So now John Marcos will present the overall trophy to the winning skipper, the Tattersall Cup, which goes right back to the first race in 1945 when Rani was successful. 28th race, as mentioned, for Matt Allen. He actually was the boat captain on Challenge for Lou Abrahams 34 years ago. And Lou, the late Lou Abrahams, the first Victorian to win the Rolex Sydney Hobart. So he has tasted success before, but not as an owner and a skipper, which he has done in this year's race. And I'll now call upon the General Manager of Rolex Australia, Mr. Patrick Boutellier, to present the magnificent timepiece again to Matt Allen. He's been striving very hard to win this. In his 28 races, I think he could easily have won on half of those occasions. But the fickle weather has played a big part, as it did last year when he was stuck in the Derwent with the overall handicap prize at his mercy on his former TP52 Ichiban, which performed very well this year. So Matt, if I could call you across and... Now Tim Sellers is a professional plumber on board, so he's a very important man. So you probably should let him hold it for the day anyway. But Matt, what about this record of a conventional fixed keel ballast, the fastest time in history? What does that mean?
Oh, Gordon, this is just like a great thrill for us all, and by breaking the 73-year history of the race record for conventionally ballasted boats, it was just an additional thrill for us. I mean, that goes back all the way to Rani in 1945, and to imagine that a 52-foot boat can actually beat that record that's really existed from Brindabella in 1999. So extra thrill on top of obviously, winning the race, which is a dream for us all. And it's the first time that I've been on the receiving end of the Tattersall Cup since 1983, but I've handed it across to lots of other people over the years. It's nice to be on the receiving end this time.
So why did you feel the necessity to upgrade when you came so close to winning last year?
Well, I tapped Gordon on the shoulder about 364 days ago and said, Gordon, let's go and have a cup of coffee. And I've got this sort of vision that we build a Super Series TP52 hull, but strengthened for offshore for the rigorous conditions of the Rolex Sydney to Hobart race. And with Tim's ability as a plumber to waterproof, and he did a pretty good job, but we certainly did get wet, don't worry about that. So we just put the rig from the old boat into the new boat, and with the latest technology, the latest design, and can I just say, the most amazing crew I've ever sailed with. I mean, these guys we pushed the boat, we had to push the boat. You're not going to win this race without pushing. And these guys just did the most amazing effort. The judgment calls by, Gordon and Will, and the guys driving the boat. We had lots of people, virtually more than half the crew drove the boat through the race, and they all just did an amazing job. And these guys, we didn't leave anything on the table. We couldn't. And it was just an amazing experience to sail with such a great group of guys that would all go to the end of the world for each other. They're really inspiration to them all.
And a crucial move by your tacticians and also Will Oxley off Tasman, because you were having a ding-dong go with your arch rival Quest.
Yeah, I think both ourselves and Quest had a couple of issues with a bit of spinnaker damage through the race, and that was just a ding-dong battle. We led the first day, then we broke the spinnaker, and then they jumped us and got in front of us. We knew the only way to pull them back was to really, as I said yesterday, was actually to drive the boat like we stole it. And it was just, you know, it was just pedal down and just fingers crossed that nothing gave way. We were lucky that nothing else gave way, and we ended up a little further east and on the right side of the shift that we'd been sort of expecting. The shift came right at the moment we thought it would, gave us a great angle into Tasman, and then coming up the Derwent, I mean, after being in a really good position last year and then being becalmed for essentially 5 hours, we came up just south of John Garrow and we parked up, just no wind at all. And we sat there for about 25 minutes, I think, and you could have cut the atmosphere on board. I mean, we were thinking, here's a replay, and we probably had about 25 minutes up on Quest at that stage, and then we thought we parked up for exactly that amount of time, and we're going, oh my God, this is game on again. But you don't ever win this race easily. But yeah, and I think you have to win it 3 times. So I think the 2 times I've won it, you had to win the race off the East Coast. You've got to win it off the East Coast of Tasmania, and then you've got to win it again in Storm Bay and the Derwent. So it's you've got to be good, and you've got to be lucky to win this race.
Di Pearson organised for the Navigators 3 days before the race to be interviewed at the press conference at the CYC. Will Oxley virtually predicted almost to the minute when you were going to arrive in the Derwent, but he said he was very worried about the Derwent. Obviously there's a huge amount of sophistication there to come at that, or is it just personal skill?
Well, Will's an awesome navigator, but you know, and everything we predicted, you know, in the ocean was correct, but there's virtually no model that's going to predict what happens just out off here and into Storm Bay, and it's very localised conditions, and as sailors we all know, you know, when you come around Tasman Island, you know, your sort of heart's in your mouth, because you know, here it is, doesn't matter how good you are as a sailor, that if there's no wind, there's no wind, and you know, it's a tricky place to sail. It's probably the reason why Tasmanians are such great sailors, you know, sailing out of here all the time. The changes in the weather, you know, it happens every 10 minutes, doesn't it?
Well, congratulations, Matt Allen and the crew of Ichiban. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 cheers. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Thank you very much.
And now the Commodore of the CYC, John Marcus, will present the battle flag to Matt Allen and his crew. The Rolex ambassadors will also make sure that the flag is beautifully presented. Wonderful photo opportunity here, but just a magnificent effort by Matt Allen and the Ichiban crew to take out the 73rd edition of the Rolex Sydney Hobart. The overall handicap winners, and you smashed the conventionally ballast fixed keel record and performed faster than many of the line honours winners in previous years. A wonderful performance, ladies and gentlemen, by Ichiban, the overall winner of the Rolex Sydney Hobart. Give them a big round of applause.